There's nothing queer in the Bibi Files, and the Nightbitch is taking the universal theory to the War of the Rohirrim. I'm Van Connor.
And I'm Adam Ball, and this is Offscreen, your 7-day guide to everything movies.
Boom.
Groovy.
Welcome back to Offscreen for another week full of movies. Before we start, Van, any movie gossip or anything you want to highlight here, or has it just been a standard week for you?
I mean, to be fair, this is an interesting week for films because, I mean, by the time this goes out, on Sunday, that Sunday morning, I'll be seeing Mufasa, The Lion King. And I think at the start of the week, I saw Nosferatu, which is out on New Year's Day. And then the following night, I saw Lord of the Rings, which is out today. And December is a weird month because you lose track of time. You see movies that are going to be like out 6 weeks in the future, and then you see ones that are out like the next day. It's the weirdest sort of month.
And that's when you have to re-watch them when you're about to review them because you can't remember what they were about 6 weeks ago.
Generally speaking, the ones they show you in advance tend to be pretty memorable. Like, you're not going to forget Nosferatu in a hurry, to be fair. So, like, I don't really think I'm going to need to I probably will revisit it before it's out because it's interesting. But I would remember enough, like, yeah, I'd be okay to talk about it nearer the time, I think.
All right, well, loads of movies today. We're going to look at Nightbitch soon. I know nothing about this, but loving the title. We are going to look at Lord of the Rings. We've got Queer and the Universal Theory, all to look at. But let's dive in with our first movie. I'm looking forward to hearing about this, the Bibi Files. So this is a documentary that is based on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, isn't it?
That is right. Okay, so this is a new documentary from Alexis Bloom, and it's produced by Alex Gibney. And the weirdest thing, I was watching this all the way through, I'm thinking, there's something feels so familiar about this. There's some intangible quality about this, just feels so familiar. Then it got to the end, it's like produced by Alex Gibney. I'm like, there it is. There he is. I knew I could feel him on here somehow. And yeah, it has that sort of comforting Alex Gibney kind of documentary aesthetic. And it explores effectively the last decade of Israeli rule by Benjamin Netanyahu as prime minister, the corruption scandals that he has basically been convicted for and has cast aside, has managed to postpone because of the war with Hamas and his complicity with Hamas, his relationship with them. Yes, it is a full warts and all documentary exploring. This doesn't really make much bones about the case that it's making. It very much wants to present Benjamin Netanyahu as a sort of alternate Trump. This is effectively, if you had a slightly more competent Donald Trump, this is who you wind up with. And that's the case that's really being made here. And obviously you see a lot of really horrifying images as well, because you're talking about a lot of, war footage from the last year, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the way you worded that, then, would you say that this isn't quite completely impartial then?
Oh, God, no, but to be fair, I think most of the world are not that impartial. Most people have picked a side when it comes to anything involving Israel. I tend to avoid it like the plague for discussion purposes. It just works better if you work in media and just don't ever bring this up.
Absolutely.
Exactly. It's the unwritten rule of broadcast media. We just never discuss that entire part of the world. But, that way no one's offended. And, this was, I say, very much has a side. It has, a stance to make, and it makes its case very, very well. And it's comprised quite heavily of interview tapes with Netanyahu himself from investigations into his corruption. So it's not, when I say a case to be made, it's not really much of a case when it's the guy himself making that case for you. When I say Trump levels of just brazen, arrogant, sort of phoned-in incompetence, I wouldn't know about that. It's very much Simpsons level. Did you steal the cigarette truck? What's a truck? Sort of a level of making a case, if you know what I mean. But you do feel that it still manages to have that feeling of movement and tension, and that sort of propulsion you get out of usually anything with Alex Gibney's name on. To be fair, you go through the litany of documentaries Alex Gibney's put out over the last decade and a half or so. Like a decade and a half that I've been doing this, Alex Gibney's churned out a fair few on subjects involving everything from Napster to Lance Armstrong. You can pretty much throw a dart you will hit something that Alex Gibney has done, has handed a documentary on. Here I say producerial, but you can sort of feel that tone and style being echoed through. I found the interview footage, of which that's kind of really the big novelty of it. The big novelty of this is, look, we've got the interview footage. And then beyond that, you've got a pretty standard documentary of talking to former friends and former supporters, and everyone who've come out in time since and said, look, even I had to take a stand against Netanyahu and just say, look, this level of corruption is just too insane. Like, you look absurd at this stage. I now have to publicly step away from you. There's a lot of that going through it as well. But say its big novelty is, its big USP, its selling point is this interview footage of both Netanyahu and his immediate cronies / accomplices, underlings. I'm not sure how you would phrase them.
Was there anything in there that completely shocked you or surprised you, or was it quite bog standard, really?
I mean, to be fair, I'm not especially knowledgeable on Benjamin Netanyahu or his career. So there was a lot in there that even I took away going, wow, okay, I really thought that was just something that, like, America was running the gamut on these days. Because to be fair, even Boris never quite reached the level of brazenness, I think, of the Trump administration. But yes, a lot of it's very Trumpian. It's, like when you've got government ministers who have specific types of champagne that they require at meetings and things like that. It's a level of opulence and obscenity that I honestly didn't quite realise was this obscene.
Would you say that watching the Bibi Files has helped you understand more about the conflict and the stuff that's happening now? Would you say it's got the educational side to it?
Yes, I would say it has given me a little bit more insight, I would say. Because I worked in a digital newsroom when the war started, so I had a sort of a bit of an early on. I had a fair amount of knowledge, and then it sort of faded over time. Yeah, this gave me a couple of little bits of insight that I didn't already have.
Good. I mean, I'm all about documentaries like this. If you feel like once you've watched it, you've learned something, and actually you can use that, as knowledge for yourself. But if you want to watch it, the Bibi Files is out in cinemas from today. We are going to move on in a moment. We're going to look at Nightbitch, which I have no idea what it's about. I'm looking forward to finding out, and we will do that together in just a minute. So stay where you are. Hello and welcome back to Offscreen. We will move swiftly on to our next movie. So this one is called Nightbitch, and it's a dark comedy. And what's a body horror?
But body horror. It's funny you say that, because this last week I finally got round to seeing The Substance. Have you heard of The Substance?
I've heard of it. Don't really know a lot about it.
You've got to see this thing. I loved it. Like I'd been warned off it by my better half. She thought it was creepy and disgusting and weird and like boring. I thought it was terrific. It's like a Black Mirror episode or a Twilight Zone episode, but it's like Cronenbergian body horror, which generally refers to the ripping of flesh, the mutilation of the human body. Body horror. So horror that literally is inflicted on the human body, usually from within, but not limited to. So it can be, for instance, like a slasher killer, like a Wes Craven, Hills Have Eyes kind of, a Texas Chainsaw would fall under body horror.
Okay.
For instance.
Right, okay,
but
that makes sense.
At the same time, Cronenberg's The Fly, for instance, in which he starts to change from within into a fly, also is body horror. You know what I mean? It's a catch-all term. The Substance is very heavily in body horror. I hadn't really thought about it, but I suppose Nightbitch would be as well, actually, yes.
Okay, so, well, let's find out about the synopsis without you giving too much away.
Right, okay. To be fair, it's one of those films of which you can't really give too much away, because the film is very much one of those that's open for interpretation at a point. So, to put this in context for you, so this is based on the best-selling novel of the same name by Rachel Yoder. So every time I hear the title Nightbitch, incidentally, my Always Sunny in Philadelphia brain goes, Nightbitch.
That's the same as me,
bitch.
Yes.
Yes. Master of the Sun. It's every single time. Every time I've never heard Nightbitch and not in my head gone, Fighter of the Day, bitch. Every time.
Yes.
So the best-selling novel has been adapted, has been written and directed for the screen by Marielle Heller. who previously gave us Diary of a Teenage Girl and Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret from last year with Rachel McAdams. This follows Amy Adams as a young woman who has been an artist. She's sort of worked in the art world all her adult life, has now given that up to become a stay-at-home mum. Her child is like just entering sort of the toddler years, but he's still quite reliant, can't really talk very much yet. The husband, played by Scoot McNairy, is one of those types who's always working away, he's always going on business trips, etc. So he's not around for large chunks of time. And the isolation of being just the stay-at-home mum on her own, no partner around, no partner who's consistently around, the sort of a social isolation that she feels even within a group of other mums and things like that, starts to weigh down on her at the same exact point that she starts to experience slight physiological changes. Just here and there, head to toe. She also starts having surreal dreams about dogs and her own animalistic side and what it would feel like to be unleashed on the neighborhood at night, right as dead animals start turning up on her doorstep in the morning. Hintity hint. You see the message they're going for. So it's not really a mystery. It's not really an open and shut one. It's very much a story about, is this woman, having a breakdown, or is she genuinely transforming into a dog, werewolf style? I've got a clip for you in which she starts to sort of suss this out for herself.
I was like a wild animal.
Yeah, wild animal.
Oh my God, yes. My husband said the same thing, that the sounds coming out of me were pure animal. He almost passed out. I mean, he's not good with blood, but...
Oh, yeah.
All right. Do you ever feel like the big secret is that we are gods?
What?
We create life. We make life. We are so powerful.
Am I to gather here that you never actually find out what's going on?
There's not really a conclusive. I don't know. I'm not really don't really want to give away sort of the end of the story, but there's not really a conclusive thing about this. The film is very much about ideas. It is about exploring ideas and theologies, and, for instance, certain philosophical aspects of motherhood. In a way that I actually thought was quite ingenious and I had not seen done for the screen before. Now, I'd imagine it's done a lot more in literature, and I can see, why you would immediately, especially with the very cool title as well, why you would want to put that on the screen. And on screen, it's quite unique. It's a lot more unique, I would imagine, than literature. The idea, for instance, of one's animal instinct being suppressed with the arrival of cubs and needing to become more of, a protector than an outright entity, in and of yourself. That sacrifice of soul, of personality, and the need to break free, to scream, effectively, to unleash the primal scream, I thought was really fascinating. And I think it's the best role that Amy Adams has had since 2016 with Arrival. Remember Arrival in 2016 with the spaceships over the Earth, and she has to figure out...
Yes.
Right, the last great Amy Adams role. She's been in films since, but they've always been quite lackluster. Don't forget, she did a bunch of the DCEU movies in that time as well. I think she did like 2 cuts of Justice League or whatever in that time. And a few David O. Russell type films like American Hustle and things like that. And there's just not really been a great role for Amy Adams in that time, since 2016. So yeah, best role she's had in ages, and she's terrific in it. She reminds you that, when you give her the material, she will come to play, and she absolutely goes all out. It's a very physical performance, a very big performance. Like, she has to really accurately convey being this sort of pent-up, restrained pressure cooker of rage and animalistic fury that's just absolutely hammering at the insides to be let out. And then you've got
That's just being a parent.
But yes, you and I were talking about this between ourselves earlier, yeah. Very much, and she conveys that really, really well. At the same time, then, you've got Scoot McNairy as the on-screen husband, who gets a really difficult balancing act himself, in that, for our purpose as the viewer, he kind of, our sympathies are with her. she is our protagonist. It's a subjective view. It's her subjective view. We kind of want to believe that he is a sort of negligent, feckless douchebag type, that he's kind of a neglectful, typically ignorant, schmo husband type. What they would like, what they try very badly to portray Ben Affleck as in Gone Girl, they never quite succeed. They actually do manage here with Scoot McNairy in a very strange way. There's a great sequence in which you see how he tries to help but doesn't really. You know what I mean? In a way that I think is quite a typically male thing. I know I've been guilty of it in the past as well. We've all done it. You know what I mean? But at the same time, the film does allow you, in the way that it's quite subjective about what's going on with Amy Adams, to perceive that you could actually see him as being quite innocent and actually being quite well-intentioned. But at the same time, is he being gaslit? It's one of those kind of dichotomies. And the film plays with this, is it or isn't it, tone throughout, and it's fantastic. Really well shot and really well put together with the way that it uses musical beats and edits and jump cuts and things like that to punctuate its story, to give pathos to moments that it just simply would not have otherwise. A nice little sting in the tail, and it plays with you as the viewer. It's quite a funny film as well. That it is quite haunting, but it is quite gross, but it is quite chilling. It has fun with all of these different tones, and it takes its time hopping between them, and I really liked that about it.
Would you say this is one to definitely watch on the big screen, or worth waiting till it comes out on streaming or whatever?
I can't see it doing massively, theatrically, because it's a very hard film to sell. Unless you're selling it as, it's a woman who's turning into a dog. But is she? It's not really that straightforward. It's not exactly Teen Wolf. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's taken you 9 minutes to get here, and you still haven't convinced me to watch it, so you proved yourself right.
Well, just take it from me. I think it's great. I think it's a fascinating performance from Amy Adams. I think Scoot McNairy's great in it. He's 2 for 2, actually, because he was in Speak No Evil a couple of months ago. He was very good in that as well. Scoot McNairy's killing it this year, has to be said. And also, I'm just always happy when there's a new Marielle Heller movie out, because I really liked Diary of a Teenage Girl. I thought it was great.
Well, Nightbitch is already out in cinemas, so you can go and watch it whenever you like, or wait until it comes out on streaming or downloadable.
Don't encourage people to that. We want the cinema to live.
I'll remind you of that when you say, don't go and see this.
But this is all right. Worth seeing. Different.
We've got Queer to talk about, and we're going to talk about Lord of the Rings next. So stay right where you are. We'll see what Van thought. Hello and welcome back to Off Screen. We've got 3 movies left. We're going to look at the Universal Theory. We're going to look at Queer. But right now, it is the turn of the Lord of the Rings, the new movie, The War. Oh, actually, you pronounce it. I'm not going there.
The War of the Rohirrim, I believe.
There we go. That one.
You need that kind of voice. It is that kind of a film. Or at least it should be. It's actually surprisingly demure. Right, okay, so just to explain this one. So yes, this is a canonical Lord of the Rings release. This is all above board. It's got Peter Jackson on board as a producer, I believe. Andy Serkis has been doing the press rounds, putting in an appearance so everyone knows it's got that official seal of approval on it. This is absolutely 100% a proper Lord of the Rings property. All right? That's important. You really remember that. You remember this is an official Lord of the Rings release, right? It's canon with the trilogy and the Hobbits. This is part of the cinema series. Don't forget. Right, anyway.
Okay.
So, so this is an animated movie about a king. Hang on, his name is King Helm. Helm Hammerhead, I believe his name is, or Hammerhun, voiced by Brian Cox, and he's the King of Rohan. So you remember the Kingdom of Rohan from the third Lord of the Rings movie from Return of the King? It had the Steward played by not John Bishop. I forget Walter Bishop from Fringe. The kingdom in Return of the King, the nice city Rohan, right?
Yes.
Oh, no, that's Gondor. Sorry. No, the first one with Brian... Oh, God, I can't remember his name now either. Bernard Hill?
Do you need Google? Hill.
The one that bloody Brad Dourif was... I don't know, Lord of the Rings. All right, anyway. So the King of Rohan, he's the one that they will go on to name Helm's Deep after. Right? So basically, he gets into a skirmish with another human clan who want to challenge him for the king. There's going to be a fight, and they're going to use this fancy-ass new fortress they've built, which, guess what, is Helm's Deep, and they're going to see if they can withstand it using this new fortress. Yeah, it's about as interesting as it sounds, to be honest. Have a listen. This is all anime style, by the way. This is all anime, Lord of the Rings, Helm's Deep. This is how they've made it sound.
The wisest move is to fall back to our strongholds. Light the beacons. Call for aid from Gondor.
The wisest move? You would have me abandon Edoras.
Until we are at full strength. Yes. This is no rabble of wild men. These men are well-trained and well-armed.
I pledge 300 riders to protect the eastern flank. The men of the Wold stand ready to fight.
I accept your pledge. Lord Thorn shall have command of the east. I will lead the vanguard north and meet Wolf on the plains.
Do you know, I've seen some screenshots of the trailer, but I've not actually watched the trailer. It looks very kind of Japanese manga.
Anime, yeah, it is very much an anime movie. So it's been brought to the screen by Kenji Kawayama, who is something of a bright spark in the anime world. Is very much, it seems like you have a sort of Bruce Timm like following, and most recently had worked on. And I ran into someone who was telling me about this the other night when I was waiting for Nosferatu. In fact, he was in the line with me. Was telling me about his work on, I think it was Star Wars Visions, which is the sort of animated anthology series that they have on Disney Plus, in which different artists get to play in the Star Wars sandbox, and he'd done some quite well-regarded episodes of that, by all accounts. I'm really intrigued to see what he made of them. I don't think his work particularly suits Lord of the Rings in this particular context, and the context is really important. And I'm going to have to be quick on this because we've still got to talk about Queer. In fact, we'll leave Queer until the last block. We'll talk about universal theory next, and at least I can do that a bit quicker. So, the weird thing here is you've got an anime movie that feels very flat in that way that a lot of anime movies can when they are drawn out to this length. This is 2 hours and 14 minutes long.
Whoa.
To put that in context, is it 2:14 this one? 2:14. Now, to put that in context, that is a minute longer than Nosferatu. And bear in mind the big scale Nosferatu is, and obviously the reference there is that this is, of course, a Lord of the Rings property, and the joke, obviously, is that length and Lord of the Rings kind of go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
This largely feels like a prolonged, drawn-out anime recreation of the Battle of Helm's Deep from Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, without any of the investment or excitement, because what you've been handed are a bunch of animated archetypes presented to us as if video game cutscene kind of characters in that sort of very stoic Game of Thrones knockoff kind of a sense that you get. Now, the reason this exists, and I had to stress off the bat that this is a proper Lord of the Rings thing, is the reason this exists, and they have made no bones whatsoever about it, is because Warner Brothers needed to release a theatrical Lord of the Rings property in cinemas before a certain time, legally, in order to actually hold on to the rights to Lord of the Rings long enough for Andy Serkis to make The Hunt for Gollum coming in 2027. That is an actual thing, and that's the reason we are talking about this.
But why did they choose to do it in anime? That's what I don't understand.
Because it's presumably cheaper and quicker and easier. So we'll just farm it off to just find me who's cool in anime. Okay, just fling like 60 mil at him. Tell me one of the Lord of the Rings thing. He can have like 2 name actors. So you get Brian Cox in the lead as Helm Hammerhead or whatever his name is, and you get Miranda Otto as Eowyn, and I think she's in some of the live action ones as well. It's set, by the way, I think it's about 180 something years before the trilogy. And you do get archival footage of Saruman, of Christopher Lee, as archival sort of voice recording of Christopher Lee as Saruman. So there is that notable effort to try and tie it in, but it's kind of like watching that Amazon Prime series where you're like, I know it's technically part of it, but I really can't be arsed. It has that. This is no joke. I went to the bathroom halfway through this, right? Because it's a long movie. I went to the bathroom and I came out and I found waiting outside the screen was my friend Nick and Faith, right? They both just sat on a bench outside. I went, what are you two doing? He was like, we just needed a break. We thought you'd just come out for a break. We realised you'd gone to the bathroom. It's like, this is a lot, right? And then Nick asked me the one question that no film critic should ever ask themselves. If you ever ask yourself this question at screening, it's not going to get better after that. This is the comment that you come out with in case of emergency, break glass. And that comment is, what are we even doing here?
Oh.
And we had that. We reached that point halfway through this. I think the last time I can remember doing that was Cats. Was Cats in 2019. Halfway through Cats. I think
you're comparing this to Cats. Wow.
In terms of the cinematic experience, because it was just like this, like there was no need to show this to the press because nobody's interested in this. It just doesn't work at all, and it never justifies itself for existing in any sense other than, look, we needed to put the Lord of the Rings badge on something and get it into cinemas because we needed to hold on to the rights. Executive produced by Peter Jackson. Very much that. Anyway, it's not very good. It's not very good. So let's talk really quickly then about the universal theory. And we can talk about Queer at the top of the show then. So this is a new movie, black and white movie, made to look like ye oldie film, like a film pretty much from its time period, which is the late 1950s, early 1960s. It's meant to look like a film from that era, like a continental European film. Written and directed by Tim Kroger, and it stars Jan Bulow, sorry, was his name. And it's actually a hell of a concept, this one. So it starts like 20 or 30 years ahead of itself. So in like the 80s, maybe late 80s, something like that, with a talk show on which an author appears to promote his latest book. And the talk show presenter literally says to him, this is also titled, by the way. And the talk show host says, so your new book is this great thriller, this fictional thriller about a scientist who goes to the Alps and gets involved in this conspiracy about physics and the human genome and this madcap adventure involving scientists. And the author says, well, actually, here's the funny thing. It's not fiction. It actually happened, but my publisher wouldn't let me release it as a non-fiction book. And then we get, in flashback, this adventure that he went on. And it's all played as this wonderful sort of late 50s, early 60s kind of Cary Grant, kind of Hitchcockian throwback thriller. This very much a sort of on Her Majesty's Secret Service, kind of in the Swiss Alps, a thriller in an adventure with scientists, that kind of an adventure. Bags of fun, really gloriously shot, and just this, wonderful nostalgia piece. Like a real, but they don't make them like they used to, kind of an exercise. Really good fun. Maybe a smidge overlong, so I think it clocked in at just under 2 hours. I think it was an hour 58, according to IMDb. And I probably could have maybe shaved another 10 or 15 minutes off it, and it would have arguably been perfect. But it's still, there's not anything in it that you remotely think that I would take that off and I would take that off. It just still works. It's a really good, really fun throwback adventure thriller, I thought.
Do you know, I've got to say, looking at the trailer that was kind of on in the background just then, how it's shot in the black and white and like the smoke and stuff. Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the fictitious movie in Home Alone where he's like, give it to the count of 10 before I blow you. It's that kind of image.
Yeah. By the way, this is a thing. I don't know if you know this. You know that's not a real movie, right?
Absolutely. And isn't it called Angels with Filthy Souls?
Angels with Filthy Souls, right? Presumably it's a pun on Angels with Dirty Faces. And the thing I love about that is I had solved this mystery myself when I was a kid because I had to know. Like the first time I had access to a film database, I had to know. Like IMDb, first iteration of that, I had to know. But apparently both Seth Rogen and Macaulay Culkin did not know this. And bear in mind, one of them was in the movie, and neither of them knew that it wasn't a real movie. They had both reached adulthood, believing that Angels with Filthy Souls was a real movie. And I love that. And I genuinely think that Disney should spend a small amount of money and actually just go and get Seth Rogen to actually make Angels with Filthy Souls for us and get a cameo in there for Macaulay Culkin. I think that should be a Disney Plus Christmas special one year.
It would, and it would absolutely sell out. I think that is a brilliant idea. Why don't you pitch it? I'll only take 10%. Right. So, still to come, we are going to talk about Queer. That's the only one we haven't done yet, isn't it? Just to make sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is, because we've mixed it up a little bit towards the end, so I'm a bit lost. But yes, so we're going to look at the movie Queer in just a moment. And of course, the Universal Theory, if you do want to watch it, is out in cinemas already. Right, we'll be back in just a second. We'll see what Van thinks to Queer. Hello and welcome back to Offscreen for one last ride. We have just one movie left to talk about, and that is the new Daniel Craig. It's called Queer, and it is out in cinemas from today. Now, I don't know a lot about this at all, apart from Daniel Craig is in it. That's pretty much my knowledge on this one.
I mean, to be fair, there's a lot you could say about the movie that ultimately boils down to because Daniel Craig is in it. So you're arguably ahead of the curve there, Mr. Ball. I was talking about this on Talk TV the other night, and I got asked, why does this movie exist? And my answer was, because Daniel Craig is in it.
Yeah. Is it made around him then?
Yeah, right. So this is the new movie from Luca Guadagnino, who gave us Challengers this past year. And this is an important thing to remember because we had this twice this past year. We had both Yorgos Lanthimos and Luca Guadagnino. Both have films that, for various reasons involving the awards cycle and the actors' strikes, had basically been the victim of scheduling, so that they had a film out, and then it felt like a couple of months later the next film. So Yorgos Lanthimos had Poor Things at the start of the year, in actuality released before Christmas the previous year, and then Kinds of Kindness just came along, felt like 5 minutes later. We've now got the same thing here as well, with Luca Guadagnino and Challengers. That got delayed because of the actors' strike and because obviously you needed the cast to kind of sell that movie. So they left that, they left that, and they left that. I think there were 3 release days on Challengers, I think, at the end. And now, obviously, we've got Yorgos' next one, what feels like 5 minutes later. In actuality, it's about 6 months. I think Challengers was about June, maybe? About June, I want to say. Anyway, all of which is saying that it's fresh in our memories that Luca Guadagnino has delivered, a quite conventional, popcorny, more mainstream type of a film. And that it's then somewhat jarring to have something, let's just say, a bit more of a return to form for him, because this is very much standard Luca Guadagnino. Not Challengers Luca Guadagnino, standard Luca Guadagnino. Which is not to say bad Luca Guadagnino, just normal, run-of-the-mill Luca Guadagnino. both versions are very good. I'm just saying, you got one of one, and you get a lot of the other. You know what I mean? We only had one Challengers. This is very much back in the first pack.
Yeah.
Right. It is an adaptation of William S. Burroughs' 1985 novella of the same name. It stars Daniel Craig, who I think may have produced this as well. And he's set in 1950s Mexico City and stars Daniel Craig as Lee, a sort of a jobbing hustler type. He's an American expat, kind of a hustler. He's hiding out in Mexico City, basically on the run from the law following a drugs bust, I think we're told, in New Orleans. So the authorities are looking for him. He's gone to hide out. He's on the lam. And effectively, he is sort of biding his time, just drinking his way through the gay hotspots of Mexico City. And basically just bedding everyone he can. That just seems to be his entire reason for existing, is just to get laid. That's really it. So it's really just an uglied up Daniel Craig just getting sloshed and getting laid. That is basically the premise of the movie, until he meets a young naval serviceman. I think his name's Allerton. young naval serviceman who has basically been like relieved of his commission in Mexico City, and the pair enter into this completely calcifying, kind of all-consuming relationship. Think of it as a sort of age-inverted or character-inverted take on Call Me By Your Name, which I believe itself was a period piece as well. I've got a clip for you. This is the pair just hanging out in a cafe discussing the menu. Have a listen for Daniel Craig here.
Oh, they list Baked Alaska. Ever read it? No. Real good. It's hot on the outside and cold inside.
That's why they call it Baked Alaska, I imagine.
You know, I got an idea for a new dish. You take a live pig and you throw it into a very hot oven. So the pig is roasted outside, and when you cut into it, it's still alive and twitching inside. Or, if we run a dramatic joint, a screaming pig covered with burning brandy runs out of the kitchen and...
Now, you see, this might be because I'm a Bond fan, and obviously I've watched Daniel Craig in many things. I'm not convinced with his accent there.
I mean, to be fair, I've lived through 2 Benoit Blanc movies in, like, Knives Out and Glass Onion, so I will begrudge Daniel Craig's silly accent if it works, and it does work in those movies. And to be fair, I didn't have any issue with his accent here. I've heard him sound weirder, like I say, Benoit Blanc. The problem is, like, I just could not engage with this movie. Just could not engage with it at all. I mean, supposedly Luca Guadagnino has intended this adaptation, has intended the project as his homage to Merchant Ivory, and we discussed Merchant Ivory. Did we discuss it last week? I think last week, the week before, the documentary about Merchant Ivory film label. Yeah. And obviously, so I had that relatively fresh in my memory, and I can kind of see what he was going for in that way. The problem is that Merchant Ivory movies were more engaging than this. Like, they generally had at least 10% more of a plot at any rate. This feels very directionless. And Drew Starkey, who you could hear in the clip playing opposite Daniel Craig, is so low energy in it. It feels like despite the fact that there is source material, just a thinly fleshed out character and an archetype. It doesn't work opposite what Daniel Craig is bringing to it. Daniel Craig is, he came to play, no one else did. And at the same time, you've got Luca Guadagnino, who's very much back on his BS, so to speak, foregoing, having spoiled us with the sort of, I can dabble in the mainstream, exercise that was Challengers. Then very much back in the Call Me By Your Name isotropes of, look, everything I make looks like a perfume commercial. If you want this but exciting, go check out Yorgos. I'm here for the perfume stuff, man. Just leave me alone. I want to hear about the wisps of tissue paper and its weight upon the human soul, and what that means to the movements of our hearts. That's all I care about. You're like, oh God, yeah, I forgot that this is what you do and that I don't like you. Oh, I got accidentally charmed by Challengers, didn't I? That's what happened. And I felt that all the way through this. Daniel Craig is great in it, though. As I said, Daniel Craig is great, but like beyond that, you're just like, why does this exist? Oh, yeah, because Daniel Craig's in it. Is there anything good about this? Yeah, Daniel Craig's in it. What's the most interesting thing going on at any given time? Daniel Craig, being on screen is the most, like, nothing else about this. Just Daniel Craig being engaging whilst getting drunk and getting laid, and then finding his soul sort of ripped apart through this relationship with this, effectively thinly drawn twink. Just that's it really. And it's a long ass movie. It's worth pointing that out as well. It's like 2 hours and 2.25, 2:15. Yeah, I think it's about 2.25. It's a long ass one. And to be perfectly honest, I hate to say this, I thought Call Me By Your Name was a better movie, and I hate Call Me By Your Name so much. I find that film so soul crushing. And the Cardigans love it, and I bet they love this. Clearly they do. But no, don't entertain this one. I think it's being distributed by Mubi anyway, so it'll be on Mubi. It'll be on streaming on Mubi like by New Year's, I reckon.
Well, there you go. You can wait for New Year and watch it on streaming for free, essentially, or you can go to the cinema.
Subscribers, obviously, but
well, obviously, if you already subscribe, it's free, essentially, if you look at it that way. Or you can go to the cinema and watch it because it is already out. It is called Queer. This is the point where we would normally discuss what we're talking about next week, but of course, we're getting close to the big old festive day itself. So this is our final show of 2024. We will be back on the 10th of January, isn't it, Van, I think?
10th, indeed, sir. Obviously, you and I will still be working together in the interim. We've got other commitments elsewhere that we're still working on. But the final off-screen of the year. And just, do you know what's weird? By the time we come back, there will have been, released in cinemas, there will have been Mufasa, which I think I'd say I'm seeing this weekend and will be out next week. Wallace and Gromit is limited theatrical from the 18th, I believe. Is then on BBC One on Christmas Day, and is then on Netflix from, I think it's January 3rd. I think it's on Netflix, so it's a bit of a weird one. You've got Better Man, the Robbie Williams biopic, which obviously...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can now say, because obviously I'm not embargoed on it, and I'm not really going to get a chance to review it on here otherwise. Better Man is absolutely terrific. Like, Better Man is superb. Like, it's literally Rocket Man for Robbie Williams. And
when's it out?
Chimp. It's out on Boxing Day this year. It's actually
great.
It's boxing, because you know every year on Boxing Day there's like a token release, and this year it's Better Man, and it's from the guy who made The Greatest Showman, Michael Gracie. So it's very much got that kinetic musical energy. I'm trying to think what else is out in the meanwhile. Nosferatu is going to be out on New Year's Day, I believe, and that's going to be huge with the cinephiles, like, and the horror classicists. Like, if you've got a horror fan in your life, like, get them some pre-sale tickets for Nosferatu, because they're going to absolutely lap that up. It's honestly, it's a gorgeous movie, and some of the jump scares in it are just nightmare fuel. Like, you will jump endlessly through it. It's a terrifying movie at times.
That's what you want.
And just honestly, Willem Dafoe just going full tilt, hammer gothic lunacy. It's really something. I'm trying to think what else. I think those are kind of the biggies. The biggies before we come back are those.
Wow.
And obviously, and don't forget, last but certainly by no means least, these sing-along editions of Wicked will be in cinemas from Christmas Day, apparently. So all of the most annoying human beings you've ever met will be confined to a single screen of any given cinema.
But
God
also
damn you people.
Lots of really good movies there as well to get stuck into over the festive period and into the new year, which we can all reflect on when we come back. But that is about all we have time for this time round and this year. So we will see you in 2025. Until then, I've been Adam Ball.
I've been Van Connor, and we shall be back.